Did you push record meeting? Okay, it is 7:01 on Tuesday, July 14th, 2020, and I will call the meeting of the Manitowoc Public School District Board of Education to order. We'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
for which it stands,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, then I'll ask our secretary to take roll.
Okay. Lisa Johnston. Dave Nichols.
Here.
Richard Nitch.
Here.
Meredith Sauer.
Here.
Catherine Schlew.
Here.
Elizabeth Williams.
Here.
And Kathy Willis.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, I have no communications. I don't believe we have any committee reports because we didn't meet between the last meeting and last Tuesday. I'll move right on then to the report of the superintendent, and that would be the payment of vouchers with Sean Alfred. And is Sean here?
I am. I'm having some different.
You are? Okay, I got you. Right on the bottom there, Sean.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. So in front of us is, I will share my screen quick if to just show it just in case. We have the payment of vouchers in front of us, which are our operational and payroll expenses for the month of June, the final month of the 2019-2020 fiscal year. In front of us on page 1 is the summary that breaks down what our accounts payable expenditures are, any voided checks, and then ultimately the payroll. Special note, the payroll is rather higher this time because on June 26th, we do our balance of contract for our teachers, which is paying them for month 11 and month 12 of the entire year. But all in total said, $9,647,877.25. All the details below in the following pages. I will just turn it over, and if there are any questions, please let me know.
Okay, if there's no questions, then I would ask for a motion and a second to approve the documents.
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Okay, that is carried. Then we'll move on to the personnel report. I believe we have two of them. We have our original report and then an addendum. And that would be Joyce.
Great, thank you. As Mr. Nichols said, you should have the personnel report that you probably received Friday. And then there was an addendum that would have been added today. So any questions on either the original personnel report or on the addendum?
If not, I'd ask for a motion to approve both reports. We'll take them together.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the personnel report is approved. We'll then move on to the superintendent and director's report.
Just an opportunity to ask any questions, or if you want some further clarifications regarding the superintendent director's report.
We should have that available to us on Board Book.
Yeah.
I would just have a question on graduation. If we have rain, do we have alternative plans for that? As there is rain in the forecast. Of course, that's always a guess, but.
Yes, I do believe that the Lincoln High School has a alternative plan. I don't want to speak for Mr. Tennis exactly on how far they would push it ahead before they would wait till moving it, but originally the date was moving it to the next day. So I know that there's an alternative plan. I don't know if in fact they're going to hold on if it rains at 10, and they're going to try to just wait and see what happens at 11 and just push it back, or at what point they're going to do that. I can definitely get feedback from him and get some information, but they're going to do everything they can to try to provide it on Saturday, and if they can't, I do believe they've articulated to the parents the next day is their rain date.
Is there any other questions on the report? If not, we'll move on to the next item, which would be the return to school update. And that's a continuing item, I guess.
Okay, just to kind of give you some updates on what we've done since last Tuesday. It's hard to believe it's been a week. So Thursday, we had 2 staff feedback meetings. And what we did is we went over the presentation for the survey. We had about 170 of our staff members in the morning and the first one, and then about another 80 in the evening. As we moved forward, we did it the next day and provided opportunities. We had about 80 parents in the first session and about the same number, 78, 80 parents in the evening session. What we did in those sessions is for both groups, they were identical. For the staff, we sent it out through an Infinite Campus and email. Through the parents, we tried to do the same thing through their Infinite Campus and email. Gave them a link, they could come on. And then there was a chat box of which we took information, sorted that information into kind of categories based on questions that they had, and are using that first to kind of help us support what kind of decisions we're making as we make the plan, preferred plan moving forward. And second, to work through basically a question and answer document so that we know that there are some questions in there that we just weren't ready to answer today, but as we get information moving forward, we'll be able to answer those questions. So I think it was helpful for us to be able to find out if the venue is attractive to our staff and our parents. So we definitely know that our staff was interested. We had 172 in one and 80 in another one. So we had about 160 parents. I don't know how many were the same in the morning and the afternoon total. So I don't know if that was ideal for families. The turnaround time was pretty quick. We invited them on Friday, and the meeting was on Monday. So that's always a challenge trying to get their timing with that. We've thought a little bit about other venues that we can use. Could we just tape it and make it available for them at any time and have a different venue for the feedback? Because what we're trying to do is get some feedback from them, and we did. And we heard from the people in there, and we have lots of different information. The chat box had questions that were logical, and then there were questions that we will have to take some time, right? Some of them were maybe just making comments, but there's lots of questions just around returning to school. What's it going to look like? If I don't want to come back to school, will I have a virtual option? Things that we've discussed here that are logical. And I think it's also fair to say that people are anxious to find out what is next. Like, when are we going to know what exactly we're going to do? So I think that has been helpful to try to just get some general information, give people an additional chance to get feedback. Some people questioned the survey. Again, just to kind of give you some feedback, we had about 400 staff members and 1,800 parents who returned the survey. So well over half in both areas. I think it was a good indicator, not scientifically sound, but it gives us some feedback. So that's what we did on Thursday and Monday for the feedback. All the time in between that, what we've been doing is just organizing ourselves so that we have and working through the data and information that we're getting. Joyce has updated the document that she shared with you, the 8 pages that talks about the return to work, because there were some changes from the CDC. And we agreed, some of the things that we're just going to have to date and put the date stamp on there says as of, because there are going to be documents that we're going to have to change. The timeline that we shared, which was a draft kind of leading with learning that talked about all the things that we were planning to do this month, that is now about 2 pages, and part of my goal tonight is just kind of give you a pace-by-pace update as what you can expect from us in terms of what we're doing next. So our goal again is to have a preferred document to the board on the 28th. And in order to do that, we have some work groups that are working on looking at all the data that we have collected. So if you recall, we did a survey at the end of the school year with parents and students about their experience with digital learning. We did a survey here that we'll use that data from, asking them about their feedback coming back to school. We have the 80-page document that I forwarded to all the board members from the DPI and return to school. We have the CDC guidelines. We have all that information, and we're now focusing on how we can provide school, like what does school look like for us. We worked on what we would call our collective commitments, and that's what we're going to use to guide, I think, the model. Those collective commitments include things like people first, equity for all, focus on learning, data-driven decision-making, and collaboration. And again, as basic as those are the focuses that we're going to have in order to develop this. So the timeline is very aggressive, but I'll just kind of give you some overview, and then we'll share some of this information moving forward. I guess one of the things I can think about as I tell you right now, before we leave tonight, I want to make sure that the information that we're sending you, you're getting, because I'm going to be sending you some information in the next 2 weeks that will be timely for you to review. So I'll let everybody know, but if I wait until the board meeting, it's likely that either the general public, our teachers, or other folks might have seen it. And again, I want to make sure you see it in case somebody asks you a question about it. So where we are today is the 14th, and again, trying to provide some updates to you is our goal. Tomorrow we have our director team, our nurses, and a few people are going to work on what we call a shell in this model, just to kind of work through all that data and use that shell to provide some options. What we will do then is work for 2 days, tomorrow and Thursday, on that shell with all those protocols, thinking about what we need to do in order to come up with a model. On Monday, we'll share what we have in a kind of a slide document with our administrators and get some feedback from our administrators. In addition to that, we will also have a large group, teacher group and staff group, who's going to give us some feedback. And then the goal would be Monday afternoon, I would also share that with a selected group of parents from the MPSD, just to give them some opportunity to give us feedback. The reason we're using selective group is because we want to have a conversation with people about it, as opposed to a chat box and just tell me what you think. So we're going to try to use a general scope of people. Some of them will be folks likely who you've gotten some emails from, we'll ask if they're available, and some of them will be people who might not have been represented in a model like this that we want to hear from. So we don't want to drive one side or the other. We're just going to try to give some information. And again, the idea would be to get feedback on, here's what we're thinking. What do you think about that? Where would you say about these models? So when I talk about those three groups, administrators, our teacher group, MEA, teacher leader, staff group, our parent group, we should then be able to adjust that shell. And again, our timeline is pretty quick. Now we're talking about next week. We would then be able to have some kind of a communication, a slideshow document that we would be able to share. I wrote down on the 21st with the board. So that's a week from today. That's again, so it would just give you an idea to say, here's what we're looking at this time. We would then have a virtual session that we would share that document on the 22nd in the listening session, like we did with the survey, first with the staff members and second with the parents. So the 21st with the staff, 22nd with the parents. Or 22nd and 23rd, I apologize. 22nd with the staff, 23rd with the parents. We'll finalize that, take that information, make sure our nurses and all of our health officials are okay with the documents that we're creating. We're now on the 24th, which is next Friday, and turning around and really looking at it hard on Monday, the 27th, knowing that the following Tuesday is the board meeting, and we would want you to have that in your hands to just say, here's what we've done, we've edited it, and we'd like to, assuming things are on task, and again, I'm telling you, this is a pretty aggressive timeline, that the board would be able to agree that this is the model that we think is appropriate moving forward. Assuming that happens, then we have a rollout communication model to our parents, to our staff, community, etc. after the 28th. I will share with you that after the 28th, there's going to be a lot of logistics that aren't going to be completed up until the 28th. For example, what people are going to, let's say we're going to take a temperature. What person is going to take a temperature at this school? Well, we're not going to be able to get into that minutia at this time. We just have to work through where we are right now. So that is our plan between the 14th today and the 28th next week, Tuesday. Lots of meetings and listening sessions trying to make sure that we have this document in place, knowing also that we have to have an alternative plan in case either the state or the health department make changes to what we're doing. So we're going to date the documents so that if in fact we have to come back and say, as of the 28th, this is what our plan is, but maybe on the August 8th, something's different, and we have to make sure that we take that in consideration. So we've reviewed lots of different documents. We've looked at what some other school districts are doing. But that's our calendar model, I guess, for today until the 28th, 2 weeks from today. So I'll stop there and ask questions.
Has there been any indication as to what we're going to be doing as far as busing the kids in, or is there a plan in place with Brant buses?
Yeah, so I've had conversations with Brant Bus specifically about transportation. There's a few things that need to be worked out with that model. And some of it will come from what we are going to request and what we're going to require. Okay, so example, if we're coming back in a model that is face-to-face or has students at least some part of the day, the conversation is, what will the bus look like? And we've talked internally about, if we agree that students are going to be on buses, we have to socially distance them, try to do everything we can, and likely we will have to have some face coverings or something to do that. The bus drivers aren't going to be able to help support that, so we will have to add staff, aides, or somebody else to help support that in the first weeks or months of school, because kids are not used to that, and that's something we have to have. We've ordered masks. We have masks available, at least 2 for every student. Part of that came from the state government requirement. working with the model, our health department, you know, there are some challenges with transportation and the different recommendations that are out there. Our CDC and the recommendation from the DPI is a little bit different than what we're seeing from our pediatric, the National Pediatric Association in terms of social distancing. But either way, we want to do everything we can to mitigate the spread. And so that likely will cause us to have a number of safety procedures in place. And Brand Bus is on board with whatever we decide. However, if we need an adult on the bus, the district is the one who is responsible for putting the adult on the bus.
Okay. Mark, is it my understanding that there will be a Q&A that is going to come out for the discussions that you had with parents?
Yes, so the first discussion, or I want to really say discussion, it was a presentation of the survey with feedback. We will, I would say that there weren't a lot of questions about the survey. A lot of the questions were about returning to school.
Right.
Will we have to wear masks? What if I don't feel comfortable coming to school? What does lunch look like? So yes, we will create a question and answer, but that question and answer, a lot of those will depend on what the model we use on returning to school. So I think we're going to answer a lot of the questions based on the feedback and information we're going to get and share with the board and our people the next 2 weeks. And I think that will answer many of those, but we've organized those into categories and are prepared to create this document. However, I can't do that until I know a little bit more for sure about what school looks like in those 3 models, right? Face-to-face, blended ed, or virtual.
Okay. And it does sound like putting your plan together is time intensive. And I know that you mentioned you'll probably be taking a final look at it like on the 27th. You know, will the board be able to get that information via board book? You know, it's early enough so we can look at it before the board meeting. And I guess the second part of that question is the board going to need to take action to accept or not accept the document you're presenting?
So I answered the first question and shift the second question to the board president. The first question would be, I plan on getting you a draft next week, Tuesday or Wednesday. Okay. I'm going to send that to you in email. That's why I'm saying I want to make sure you have that, because if I put the board book, it becomes a public document, and I might not want to make it public yet.
Yeah.
Okay, I might want you to have feedback before it becomes a public document. It likely will become a public document on Thursday when we present it to the public staff, etc. But there are times where I want the board to have that ahead of time, so that if people ask you questions, you already have it, as opposed to people are asking you questions and you haven't seen it yet. That puts you in a tough spot.
Good.
Okay, and then I'll answer the question as to whether or not the board should be the body that approves it. I would strongly suggest that in the best interest of everyone that's involved, that the board does take action to either approve or to reject the proposal that comes forward. However, understanding that if we don't approve the plan that comes forward because we're not directly involved in all of the discussions, we better have a better plan than what's presented to us. And we don't have a lot of time to do it. The Milwaukee School District has already made their decision. Now they're a high-risk county, so there are other factors involved there, but we need to pay attention to what's going on, what's happening on a day-to-day basis. We need to go over the documents that we're going to receive, the information we receive, and we need to be prepared to make a decision on the 28th, if at all possible. And if at all possible, I would hope that the information we receive is favorable to the board. But again, that's up to us to decide. And if we have different feelings, let's make sure that they're brought forward.
Mark, one other thing, Okay, I know we're probably going to end up with some online learning. How is that going to look compared to what we had, you know, going into the initial closure of the schools?
It's a great question. We haven't developed the online model. Some of it will depend on the size of the or the number of student population who chooses to not come to school. I guess, in all honesty, it really depends on if we're coming back to school. If we are virtual, it'll look the same for everybody, right? It will look different because we'll be better at it and we'll have more information to be able to share based on where we were in March compared to where we are now. But what I would articulate that if we are going to school in a blended ed model or a face-to-face model, I'm not going to be in a position to ask teachers to do both. So the individual learning, the data that we're going to get is likely going to be student led and parent led as opposed to teacher led. That's the typical online model. So what I mean by that is the feedback you're going to get is likely coming from emails and from feedback from assessments that you're getting, not from a Google Meet with the teacher who you have. And the rationale behind that is if the teacher who you have has 15, 18, 20 kids, I'm not going to be able to have 5 or 7 other kids at the same time being online. Now, if we can group kids together and make classes of kids and have teachers who are interested in doing that, I think that is also a possibility. But again, we haven't developed the model. And part of that is because we have to get a feel for how many parents would opt out. But I guess what I'm telling you is we will work with all of those families to try to make an option for them if they choose, if they're not comfortable with the decision that we make. I talked to our group today, and what I would tell you is that if the decision is a blended ed model or a virtual model, we will not give parents the option to come back every day. So if we're not, so the option would be you're going to go virtual, not you're going to come back in a blended ed model or a face-to-face model if we choose something, if we choose virtual. So again, the model of choosing virtual would be that our health requirements are not at a place where we can't bring people back in a safe manner. I'm not going to be able to say to families, but you could choose to come face-to-face. If we choose face-to-face or blended ed, we could choose to create an option for virtual. So that's I just want to make sure to clarify. I can't make every option work, but that one I could work.
Yeah, okay.
I appreciate that, Mark.
Yeah.
As a parent, I'm not ready to send my kid back. I'm not. So I appreciate the options that you're putting out there. With the plan and looking at the meeting on the 28th, will the public be allowed to see that plan and give input before we make any decision?
I will share with the board tomorrow. And again, we finished this at literally about 4:30 today. So I didn't want to just forward it into that model, but I'm just looking at our dates here, and I have on my calendar 2 times for parent feedback the week before the board. So this is next week. Let me just find the timeline here. And so July 23rd at 1 o'clock and 6 o'clock, we will be sharing our, the board is comfortable with where we are, sharing this information in that virtual setting that allows parents to give us feedback in a chat box. And the reason we do it that way is because if I have 100 or 80 people, 175, I can't allow everybody to talk. It's not going to work. That's the model we use.
Mark, just a clarification, when you indicate that that's a parent input, that would include the entire community. Anyone could be in there. So it's the surveys themselves went to the parents. But when we open it up to a virtual meeting, then we're actually opening it up to anyone in the community. So we could get many people who have no children in the district, for example, but we're allowing that input, just so we're aware of that. We're not restricting that input to only parents. It could be anyone in the community or even people outside the community. Right?
And will those be recorded so that we can review those before we make our decision?
Yes, we can record. We do record the meetings, and I can make those available. We generally what we'll do is we'll make them available to the public. So what the plan is for the parents and the staff, I will send the staff an email invitation, and I will send the parents an email invitation, and we will also post it on our website. So our parents will get personally invited in an email invitation. The web link is the same as the one that the parents get. So anybody in the community, we likely push it out through social media. Anybody can link on that, but I'm going to personally invite our parents. Obviously, I don't have the public's email, so I'm not going to personally invite the public, but I can invite the parents. I can do that.
Mark, I'd like to see that invitation happen, as you said, on our website, but in a distinct location, as in our homepage. I think that, in the past, we kind of have things where people have had to seek them out through, and it would be best and be more transparent if we could have it distinctly written on our homepage. I think we could do that for a lot of things, but that's a whole different other conversation. But that it would be great if we could have notation and a link for that right there, very visible.
Yeah, I agree. I would tell you that sometimes we're scrambling a bit when we're trying to turn things around really quickly. And the number of people who have the expertise to put it on the web, I think is 3. And in the summer, sometimes you're reduced. And in this COVID time, I've articulated to the team today, I don't know how to do that. I mean, even if I wanted to, I don't know how to put a link on the web. So we have a little more time. We have 2 weeks before that meeting. So it definitely will get up there and we can get it. The last parent meeting, we agreed on, I think the board meeting was on Tuesday, and we put the link on and invited people on Friday, and the meeting was on Monday. So the turnaround time is so quick. So we'll be better at that. Again, I don't want to say we'll be champions of virtual meetings and learning, because soon we'll be back face to face, and hopefully we can not have to do that and we could have an auditorium meeting or something, but right now that's just not feasible. So I will definitely make sure we put all of those communications on our homepage.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, I had an opportunity to sit in on one of the parent meetings on Monday. Did the board have access to the teacher meetings as well?
Here. I don't know if I sent you those links or not. I did not. Did not? Oh, okay. So I didn't. I will the next ones. I think there's a couple of pieces that I'm, again, we're trying to turn it over. I apologize for that. I do have a recording of them. So if you do want to see that, I could forward that to the board members.
Yes, please.
I'll do that.
And Mark, would that include the comments, that the teachers made?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm. What we did, and I don't know if this is better safe than sorry, and we can do this for the future, is we did post those times for the parents, just because if in fact we did have a quorum of board members who attended those, we want to make sure that, much like if we're going somewhere, we do that. So what I'm hearing is that the board members may be interested in either the staff or the parents. So we'll post, those will be 4 different times you're going to see, 2 for the staff and 2 for the parents. On the 23rd would be the parents, and the 22nd would be the staff. So we'll forward that information in a link out to you. The one for the staff is a unique link that we don't send to the public. Not that they couldn't get that, but it's really for our staff. And the one for the parents is for everybody. So just so you know.
Good. Thank you.
Other questions about the timeline? Okay, I would just articulate again that there's a lot of information going in and out. I was at a meeting virtually this morning with Mike Thompson, who is the deputy director for the DPI, and a number of other superintendents asking some very specific questions about How do we count school? What does third Friday look like? Will we have minute waivers? Does the, all those things that, in addition to trying to figure out how do we come back, we've got virtual, we've got this school district of 5,000 kids that we need to keep running. And what does it look like for alternative licensure? And how long do we have to wait for some of these CARES Act dollars? So I do know that there is some good information coming from the state that likely means we're going to get a few waivers. And the waivers could be, a waiver for the number of minutes, how we count kids on third Friday. Those are a little ways away yet, but again, I needed to know from him that if we have a virtual setting and kids aren't in school, we can count them for third Friday. If we have 150 kids who we can't count, that is not going to be good. So he assured everybody in the meeting that he'd make some accommodations. Right now, he didn't feel like there would be a legislative need to make those changes, that they could do that in-house. But that was part of the conversation. The other part of the conversation that probably took over was the Dave Anderson from the WIAA talked about what fall sports would look like. And there was lots of comments about what are we going to do and how are we going to do it. And will the WIAA make a statement in regards to what's going to happen? The shortened 1 hour plus meeting version was likely the WIA is not going to say they're going to say, if you want to have sports, we will help you. They're not going to say we're not going to have sports or we are going to have sports. So I just wanted you to know that that's also on the back page. Football is slated to start on August 2nd. And I articulated, and I just want to make sure the board's on the same page, that if we're not able to come back in a face-to-face model, it's going to be really difficult for us to say, but we can come back and practice after school every day if we can't be in school every day. So the reason I bring that up is, I don't have the model yet, but I am confident that if there is any adjustments to our fall sports, they're not going to come from the WIAA. They're going to have to come from us, or me, if that's the case. And you and I will likely, if we choose to do something or choose not to do something, we are going to receive feedback on what that is. So I just want to give you that input that is coming. I know that we see major colleges making decisions from fall sports. We saw some of the football colleges saying that they are either not having any fall sports or they're going to have no non-conference games. I do feel that co-curriculars, we've talked about how important they are to students and their achievements, and we want to make sure that we provide whatever opportunities we can. So I don't want to mislead you and say we're not going to have anything, but what I do want you, what I want to do is make sure you understand that my philosophy would be that if we have to restrict the school day based on the health and safety and well-being of kids, we're not likely going to be in a position, I won't be in a position to recommend something to you that would bring our student athletes back every single day and practicing if we can't go to school every single day and practice. So I don't know. The reason I say that is because I'm not sure that every school district's going to do that. I know that tomorrow there's a meeting with the conference, and David CPEC is going to have some conversations about what the conference wants to do. There are some sports that seem easier, maybe. Cross country, it seems like we could probably make 6 foot spacing work, unless I'm really fast or not, but tennis maybe. But again, I just want you to know that I haven't made any decisions. Athletic director and high school principal will work through those processes, but even the after school groups that we have, we talked about we're not letting outside groups come in yet because we're just not ready to do that. The after school activities are going to be unique as well, because if we're not going to be able to come on a regular basis, and I'm not saying we can't, but if that happens, we have to make sure that we're conscious about what the after school activities look like. And that won't be an easy decision or easy conversations with those people who are very passionate, and I understand that about their unique sport. So I will give you updates as we see it. I do know from that meeting that the WIAA and the superintendent's group is going to put out a survey in the next few days to ask what the recommendations from groups would be. And we will see. I mean, there's all kinds of conversations, but I just want you to know that you may get tapped on the shoulder about what do you think about, and yeah, that will come our way. So it might be part of the 28th decision as well. We may need to have a separate conversation. I don't know if we want to link it in with all the things we're doing, but we're going to have to, I think football is slated to begin August 2nd. And if we don't make some kind of a statement, that's when it begins. And I don't want to say that they can't do something, but that's looming quicker than I had hoped. So some of the other sports follow weeks after that, but I just want you to know that I've had a few conversations. They're very passionate people, and I get it. I really want our kids to have some opportunities, but our focus is making sure that the health and well-being of our students, our staff, and our community, and get them back to school first. And if we can accomplish that in a safe and orderly manner, then we'll work on the other pieces.
Mark, where are we at with the plans for opening our facilities for the athletes? We had that 2-week trial period. What is happening with that right now?
I think it worked out so far very well in lots of different scenarios. So what's happening is that the student athletes fill out an online, basically an app that we put in that goes through their health. Have they been ill? Have they traveled? Have they been in contact with anybody? Assuming those are all done, then the trainers that are at the schools check that off. They take their temperature, then they go to their assigned station for up to 1 hour, bringing their own water bottles and those kind of things. We have been very restrictive and very limited, meaning that there's 10 kids, there's a half an hour in between two. We wipe down all the equipment. There is a group that goes out to Rubik Field, and they basically run on a track or on the football field, spacing themselves apart, and do some conditioning. I would also tell you that we learned about people who we had to exclude as well, because they gave us information and we said, oh, you can't be here. So I think it's gone well. We haven't decided yet to do phase 2. And some of that's going to be probably depending on what the model looks like here for us in the next week and a half. I think it's healthy for those kids who are involved. It gives them something to do. I think they've followed the guidelines, our coaches, our trainers, and all there. But, we have 3 people, 2 trainers, the coaches, and our nurse that are and our athletic director that are right there working with all those pieces. And we likely don't have the same capabilities in a return to school where we would have all those folks right there. So we're trying to limit that. I would say from the kid standpoint and a coach's standpoint, it's gone well. 100 kids or so a day that have gone through there, sometimes more. But I don't know. We haven't decided that we're going to. Phase 2 would open up more places, some of them outside places, but then it limits our ability. It just stretches our team because we don't have any more trainers and we don't have any more nurses to go to the places to make sure all those protocols and the things are done. And so we're still on phase 1, but I think it's been helpful.
Have you thought of using some of the leftover stipend money from coaches that they could possibly help fill in those other spaces if we do expand, if it should come to that? It's just a thought. You don't even need to respond if you don't want to. So.
Yeah, I don't think the issue is getting people. I think the issue is getting trained and qualified people and not putting people who don't want to be there in that position, because all the coaches are volunteering and all the kids are volunteering. And because we're asking them to volunteer, they don't have to come if they're not comfortable and they don't want to do that. As soon as I start asking people who we have in contract to be there, and likely I am putting all of the trainers and the nurses, if you're taking a temperature for somebody, you're less than 6 feet away. And I mean, they can have a mask on. So I don't think the issue is the people. Our coaches are ready to do it. The issue is, do we want, I don't know, let's say, is the next place Lincoln Park for tennis or soccer at Ron Rubik Field, or how many kids do we want to add? And the more you add, I would tell you, I read an article, and this was worrisome. The last thing I want to do is have a spread of the virus in our system before school begins. So I just read an article from a school district in Illinois that had 22 kids who were in a fall sport training camp test positive, and now that whole fall season is shut down before school even begins. So I don't want to be a pessimist. I want our kids to have those opportunities, and we're going to do everything we can to do that. Maybe we can open it up in a model that's safe. But I don't want to be here on the 24th saying, yeah, boy, we've got 9 kids from this and 8 from this, and I don't think we can open up these schools and we haven't even started yet. That's the thing that makes me really, really nervous. Our goal is September 1st to do everything we can to get those kids in the best learning environment we can. And so as passionate as I am about lots of things, some things we just can't do everything in this pandemic model. So we'll work on it. We may go to phase 2, which would open up maybe Lincoln Park or some soccer balls at the field. But we're going to be sure that we're going to be able to monitor what we see.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about return to school?
Okay, thank you, Mark. Still a lot of work to do. There's no unfinished business. We'll move on to new business, and I'll turn that over to Sean Alfred. We have some items on our student loans and depositories that we need to approve, and that's a yearly thing. So, Sean?
Thank you, Chairperson Nichols. So the first part in front of us, I'm going to share my screen again or present so we can just see this memo that's there. Is on an annual basis, we have what we call our student loans, which is to remind you, back in February, we were authorized to give out $300,000 in $2,000 increments to students that are graduating or have graduated in the last 4 years to apply for a $2,000 loan to assist with schooling at a post-secondary education college. The memo in front of you, apologize, now it's on there, is we give a timeline of where we ask for the people to return back the applications by July 1st. And these are the people that have submitted intentions to ask for funds. There are some that do flow through late. That's why at the bottom, we do ask if we could get an authorization up to that $300,000 that was approved back in February. But ultimately here we have initial loans. At the bottom is a good summary of 14 students are asking if they can take out initial loans, which 65 students are asking to take out additional loans. And the checks are generally sent out in August, assuming board approval on this list. And then they are used as the student sees fit to help with their educational needs, textbooks, tuition, room and board. So ultimately it's in front of you on an annual basis. We just ask for board approval to proceed with issuing the checks to these individuals.
Sean, what is the interest rate for those students, or is there none?
The interest rate is generally about 0.5% less than what the current Fed rate goes at. But historically, this year it's 4%.
Okay, and what is how is our payback ratio? How does that look percentage wise? I mean, are we at 100%? Do we have 90% payback, and in what time frame?
Certainly. Yeah. Great question, Kathy. Thank you. Payback is generally fairly good. It's gotten a lot better as we have progressed in our processes on MPSD's behalf of reminding students more electronic reminders, and actually finding that sometimes contacting the parents is the best way to go. But it is not 100% payback. There are some outstanding loans out there that are generally, we give them, we say, if we take out the loan today for your initial loan, we ask for full payment of all loans 10 years from the first loan. So if you can imagine, by 2030, if you went to school for 5 years and took out the 2000, we would ask by 2030, all loans are paid back. It is refreshing to know that the number of people who have not paid back after the 10 years is extremely low. I would say probably on a collection rate, we just went through a mass fix. When I say mass, please don't think that means number. That just means we changed some things on our end. I would probably say we are at between 90 and 95% collection rate. Sometimes students have the option to contact us and speak with myself directly. To ultimately, what we're really trying to get back is principal. We might make out payment plans or various negotiations when it comes to interest. But typically very, very high collection, not collection rate, payback rate.
Okay, I would ask for a motion and a second to approve the student loan document.
I would move that we approve the student loan document.
I'd like to second, please.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the motion's carried. And then we'll move on to the district funds, Sean?
Certainly. The other part is another annual basis that we look at. On an annual basis, we need your guys' blessing for where the MPSD keeps its depository. So basically, it's funds, whether it be cash, investments, or any other kind of municipal security. So the memo in front and presented on the screen is just kind of how it is. It's of a state statute 34.05. There just has the board approved that we are able to deposit most of our funds. For those of you that are new, or as a refresher, our predominant bank that we use is the Bank First National. That has all our checking accounts that we use to pay our AP, payroll, and other operation expenses. And all the remaining down there below, from Associated through Wisconsin Public Depositories, is what we use for any kind of investments, debt, bonds, or any other natures in that sense of there. So that's kind of the remaining, how the relationship goes with those. But really, all our funds at the Bank First National are secured by what we call pledge securities. Basically, it's our funds are protected up to $10 million from Bank First National through the Federal Home Loan Bank. And then our investments, much like all investments, are at the risk of how the market does as well. But just asking for your approval that we continue with those banks, and just kind of a little explanation of the evaluation of that goes in of how we determine who to continue relationships with.
Okay, I would ask for a motion and a second to approve the depository district funds.
I'll move we approve it.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, that's approved. Okay, and the final item under new business, that's something that I asked Superintendent Holtzman to put on the agenda. We have been, I guess, called out by the federal government that our achievement gaps are too wide, that we need, and it's mandated that we have to improve those gaps and close them. And with that, I believe there's an issue of equity that plays a role in that. When we look at the students that are not meeting expectations, that are the underachievers, it does play into the role of equity. Now, I've done a lot of research in the last week on that. Our mission statement talks about equality. We have a non-discrimination policy. However, we don't address equity, and equality and equity are not the same thing. Equality just means that we offer an opportunity for all students to learn. With equity, we offer each student an opportunity to learn. And so that again falls into the area of academic achievement gaps. And I would just ask the board to have some input on that. I found what I felt was a very good equity policy from the Wauwatosa School District. I know they had put that together several years ago. I've done a lot of officiating down there, so I'm familiar with a number of people that work there. But it's my belief that whether we make a statement on equity or we put it in our mission statement or even develop a policy, that I think we need to take some action. Obviously, there are things going on that are out in the media that are happening not only in the nation but in our own community, and I just felt like it's an opportune time for us to be a bit proactive on it. I haven't heard anything. I hope that none of us have heard anything, any negative comments. Unfortunately, many of the people that the parents or parent of these students aren't the ones that are contacting us. We hear a lot from those students that are doing well, that are in the accelerated classes, but we seldom hear from the lower achievers. And there's a communication gap, and we can blame those parents and say, well, they're not available. We heard that from one of the principals when I asked the question of, are we contacting parents? And his response was, well, I try, but they don't get back to me, or I'm not able to get hold of them. That's true, but that's part of the equity issue. And so I think it's time to address it. So I'll leave it open to the board right now to offer any feedback.
Dave, when you say the federal government, it has expressed concerns in regard to the academic achievement gap and equity, is this something that went out to all school districts, or something that came to the Manitowoc Public Schools because of observed achievement gaps?
Well, it would have gone to the schools that are not meeting the achievement levels, and we were one of those. This came up, I'm not sure if you were even on the board, Dick, when we first brought this forward, but it isn't a request, it's effectively a mandate. We need to take steps to improve or to close those gaps with that population of students. And so it's going to be a requirement, and we have found funds to do that. I believe we've dedicated somewhere in the range of $180,000 for that.
Right.
Now, I would say that again is where I really want to focus on the equity issue. I want to make sure that money is spent well. It's not just a matter of hiring people. We need to hire people who can play a significant role in the issue of equity.
Yeah. That 180,000, Dave, are you referring to the money that we received because of our disproportionality in the area of EBD and special ed?
Yes.
Okay.
According to Joanne, and Joanne, I think you're on here somewhere, that actually was not money we received, but money that was pulled from her budget in order to create those positions for equity. Am I correct, Joanne? Thank you. I'm glad I got that right. We had a good conversation.
Catherine, it was money received. It just is being diverted into a different area than we might have originally put it in.
Okay.
So it is funding that we received.
So those dollars are going to be used not specifically, for the area that was identified, it's as disproportionate, but it's going to be used more generally in regard to achievement gaps. Is that correct?
That money actually is specifically to reduce the number of EBD students who are identified as Black. That's exactly what that money is set aside for.
Right.
We were identified with as a district with having too many students in our EBD population who identify as Black. So we had to take money from our IDE funds and shift it from mandatory set aside. I don't know, 5%. Joanne and John can tell us what the percent was. To the tune of about $180,000. And that will be be used to reduce the number of students who identify as Black and EBD.
Right. And I understand that, so is the academic achievement gap that the federal government is concerned about the same thing as that disproportionality that was discussed in the past? Or are they going above and beyond and looking at all achievement gaps, for instance, some of the cells like economically disadvantaged and some of the other areas?
So I think we're mixing a little bit of academic and behavior. But what I would tell you is that the federal government looks at all areas.
Right.
And we were only identified in the area from the federal government in EBD who identify as Black. But I would also articulate that we have many, many other areas that we are significantly below, and we have been warned, if the word is right. I don't know, Graham Lenzar maybe can help me with the language that they use, but our gap is significant, but it hasn't been either 2 years in a row or so great that we've been identified. And that's any group. EBD, it could be special education, it could be any ethnic group, it could be gender, it could be EL, it could be any other. I see Pam on the screen.
Yeah, we get notified that we need to put together some plans to address specific achievement gaps. So our building leaders are working with their teams to dig into those subgroup data pieces, in addition to looking at their overarching data to make sure that they're analyzing those gaps and then also developing plans to address them.
Okay. So Dave, is the federal government looking for something in a line of a policy from the board, or are they looking, my understanding is they're looking for corrective action?
They're looking for corrective action. Yeah. It's essentially improve the statistics that you have.
Right.
The data we receive indicates that you're not meeting the standards that we've set, and you need to do that. I'm looking, though, for the bigger picture, and that is to address the issue of equity and find a way to do that so that we do that over a long-term basis and not simply point out certain incidents that have occurred and, jump on top of those and say, oh, we don't like that, we don't agree with that, and then it goes away. Because, 6 months from now, most people forget what happened. Those things happened. They get referenced occasionally, but by coming up with some, and I would lean towards a policy that, we would put in place, would say that the Manitowoc Public School District recognizes that issue, and this is what we do. And then anyone who looks at our policy will know that, and the board would have to abide by that, and our entire district would have to abide by that, because it is, it's one of our policies.
Dave,
I
what are
would
you
love to see if there's professional development around that as well. Maybe for the board as well, teachers, everybody, and have some solid discussion and training on equity itself, because it's definitely needed.
Having done, some of the research I did indicated that there are boards that have done that. They've not only provided training for the staff, but they've also provided it for the board members themselves.
It starts with us, and I would wholeheartedly agree with that.
Were you able to view any sample policies, Dave?
Yes, I had indicated the one that really jumped out at me was the Wauwatosa one. I had been familiar that they had done that several years ago, and I have that, and I can send that out to everybody. Hopefully in a better format than I sent it to Mark. I had to send him a couple of them just to get it to him, but I'll figure out a way to send that, and you can look through that. Now it's a different district than we are, but they have similar concerns. And again, it was the one that I pointed out. You can do your own research on that, but I felt that was appropriate if that's the direction we want to go. And to me, we need to do something. A statement itself is again, that's good at the time, but it doesn't always follow through, and people don't always reference it. When you put something in writing and it's fixed in a location, it's available to everybody, and essentially you have to abide by it. It becomes a rule of how you operate.
So I'd like to make a statement in that in no way am I trying to diminish the issue of equity by saying what I'm about to say. But I had a great conversation with Joanne Metzen last week. We had a meeting and she brought up something that I actually would like to see us as a board adopt, which was a direction that we set goals for the next coming year or 2 years. Perhaps that's one of them, but we all have specialties. We all have passions. And I think it would be great to somehow, and I don't know what this would look like, that we could come together and discuss as a board, what are our goals in the next year or two? What do we want to see short-term and long-term for our school district and what that means, rather than constantly putting out fires? Obviously, COVID is our number one priority. No one can deny that right now. But aside from that, where do we want to take? What direction do we have? And maybe our number one priority is equity. I don't know, but surely there are other priorities we may see too that we want to take our school district in a direction. So I'd like to just kind of put that out there for food for thought, that maybe as a board somehow we could come up with goals, because I think Joanne's idea was terrific and I internally adopted that right away. I think it's great too that people in our community, our teachers, Mark, our directors all know who we are and where we want to go as a school district. So
I would agree with you, Kathy. You know, school districts that I've been associated with in the past often have had, you know, as annual school board goals. You can create a policy, and policies over time get lost in large policy books, you know, and you know, you need goals that are out in front of you in order to keep them in front of people, and something you continue to work on. So I concur with what you were suggesting.
Any other input?
I just mentioned, if I could, I just applaud the board in having the conversation about equity. I know that in our world and in our community, it is not an easy conversation to have about how our students and how our people are treated, and do we have policies and procedures that limit students from being the best version of themselves they can be. And I definitely will do whatever the board directs in regards to working towards that. But we have an opportunity to really help support all students, specifically those whose voices we might not hear through phone calls or emails. And that doesn't mean that those voices aren't loud and aren't important. It just means we're not the ones who hear them always. So I very much appreciate President Nichols bringing it up and the board just considering moving forward with that, because it will come with some challenges. If we decide as a board that we are going to use the lens of equity, we're going to have to ask ourselves some questions. Like, is this fair for all? Or is this fair for some? And I think that will really be a great conversation as we move forward. And we can think about that. That's one of our lenses for looking at return to school. When we think about what students most likely were able to be successful in a home online version and what students weren't, right? And we could just start thinking about EL, kids who have poverty, kids who don't have parents at home. They're not achieving at the same levels as students who have some of those in a likely scenario. And are we going to reproduce that again? So appreciate you taking the time, and I will support any way I can.
So Dave, how do we keep that conversation going? Is that going to be a standing agenda item, or where do you want to go?
I would like it to be, yes. What I will do for now is I'll send out the information that I've collected, just so at least you have that to reference. And I'll put it on the agenda for our next meetings as we move forward. Obviously, we have a bigger issue right now in terms of opening our schools, but I don't want to dismiss it. And I think it's something that I brought up, and I think we need to stick with it. And regardless of what action we take, I think we need to take some action on it. I think it's important, and it's not going to change within our district. So, Yeah, Meredith, I'll have it on there. We'll open it for discussion, and at some point, perhaps send it to the personnel committee, for example, if we're going to draw anything up, things like that. We'll stay with it.
Is it possible, Dave, to set like a goals meeting? Obviously, again, our going back to school sets precedence before anything else at the moment, but like in the near-ish future, when it is deemed appropriate, if we could have some sort of, I don't know what that would look like. You're our board president, so something where we can bond together over, like, maybe we have 2 goals or 3 goals for the next year or 2. So.
Well, we've done something similar to that in the past. We've had what we call a retreat, a longer meeting during the day. It's lasted anywhere from 3 to 4 hours. So we've done that, and we've gone over issues. Had longer discussions on many issues. So it would be very challenging to do that in a regular board meeting where we had other agenda items, because if we're going to do that, there's going to be a lot of input. We're going to have a lot of ideas. And yes, I agree with you. It's a great idea. I'm not sure that right now is the time to plan for it, again, because we have what we have in front of us. But we've typically done that either in July or August. The last several years we did it in August. Again, I'm not sure that will be able to be done with the changing environment that we live in. We may not be able to get to that, but I think it's definitely something that we will do.
Okay.
I'm just not certain when it will occur.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, like this fall when we're back at school, or in whatever scenario that means. It could be September, October, whatever. So.
Yeah. Again, and that's assuming that, because the situation is so fluid right now, assuming that we are in a position where we can feel like we're fixed at it for a while. more than a day or 2, as it is now. But yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your input, and hopefully we can have very good discussion on these issues, and come up with something that we can use as a base to move forward.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Jake.
You're welcome. Anything else on that for now? Also, just under new business, I know Kathy, you had attended a CISA meeting. Did you want to provide any feedback on that meeting for us?
Oh, not a whole lot. I guess, as a new board member, my brain is always swimming with new information everywhere. And then what was interesting is learning that CISA 7 operates much like our school board does. Their meetings, their agendas are nearly the same as ours. And it was considered their conference, their annual meeting. So it really was a reorganizational meeting, which follows the typical district reorganization meetings, because that brings in the new members into CISA 7. So there were 2 topics that I thought were very interesting. One was they have a retiree return program, which helps districts find positions which are normally difficult. And one thing that was brought up was the school psychologist position, and how difficult that is to find people in that role. And given that we had just had that discussion literally days before, the day before, I thought that was very interesting. And they also have a virtual education service for students who are not showing up at school. So I thought, I don't know what that all entails, but my ears were perked, and I thought that was possibly something we could look into as a district if needed. So I guess that's all I would report at this time, but I was very thankful to have gone. I think it'll be great in the future to network with other school districts to see what they're doing, and just to become more informed about our education system and what's best for our students. So that'd be my report.
Thank you, Kathy. And just for the board as a whole, if you ever attend any meetings that are school board or go online for any seminars, you're perfectly welcome to provide that feedback to the rest of the board of what you heard, what you saw, because I think it can be beneficial to us. So, unless there's anything else, I would move to ask the directors if there are any meetings that they have planned. Do any of the directors have any future meetings planned, or is your time all taken up with the return to school issue?
Mr. Nichols?
Yes.
Mr. Nichols, yes, I will, I would like to and ask that we have a personnel committee meeting. I can reach out to Lisa. I know she's the chair. She's not in the meeting, but I'm looking at like the 28th. Meredith, can you remind me what day or days or afternoons don't work for you?
I can be flexible on that particular day because I'm taking that week off and I'll be at home, but I'll be also facilitating a conference. So we'll talk.
Okay,
Thursdays
but
are the normal day though.
Okay, but Tuesday and I know Kathy as well, and like I said, I'll reach out to Lisa as the chair, but ideally I'm looking at Tuesday, the 28th. So I'll get something out and again, check with Lisa. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
Yeah, and that's the day of our meeting, which would normally be scheduled for noon, so.
We have a
Anything else? Otherwise, I would ask for a motion to adjourn in a second.
I see Pam wants.
Oh, Pam? Are you waving at me, Pam? Oh, you're right at the bottom. See, I couldn't see that. Sorry.
We have a curriculum committee
Okay.
meeting on the 21st at 6
Okay.
p.m.
Okay. And Sean's not waving. I can see him. He's in the middle of my screen. Okay. And Chris, I don't know that he needs a meeting, right? All right. I will ask for a motion to adjourn in a second.
I so move.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Okay, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much, and look forward to receiving a multitude of information in the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey,
Thanks,
board,
guys.
before you leave, I've been informed that at times your email sometimes goes in your spam. So I just want you to know that tomorrow, how about at noon, I will send everybody an email. And if you don't get it, send it back to me or send me a return because I want to see it might be going in your spam. We've had a couple of those times. So
All right, we'll watch for it.
Lori will remind me. You all folks, thanks for being here.
Thanks,
All
Mark.
right.
You know, Mark, if you grow a little mustache, you'd look a lot more like Sean when you do your mask that way. You got like his beard going. You just need the stash now. So anyway. Anyway, have a great night, everybody. Take care.
Good night, all.
Bye, guys.